I'm Alex Mitchell, I'm 35, and my own father texted me that I was too poor and embarrassing to show up at his retirement party. A party being held in a luxury hotel that I secretly owned. Before I tell you about the moment my father's jaw hit the floor when the entire staff greeted me as their boss, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can reach. It all started on a Tuesday, a day that felt no different from any other. I was in my office, a space I'd designed to be my sanctuary. Takes up the entire 60th floor of what the city calls the Sterling Tower. The glass walls give me a panoramic view of the skyline, a constant reminder of what I'd built. On the wall behind my desk hangs a single piece of art, a massive, chaotic abstract painting that, from a distance, resolves into a serene image of a single, powerful wave. It's a metaphor for my life. To the world, I am A.M. Sterling, the reclusive founder of the Sapphire Hospitality Group. A name whispered in business journals. To my family, however, I was just Alex, the black sheep, the son who traded a respectable career in accounting for what my father called a glorified waiter's job. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple. This was my favorite time of day, the quiet hum of the city settling into a gentle rhythm. That peace was shattered by the buzz of my phone. The caller ID read, Daniel Cooper. A wave of nostalgia and unease washed over me. Daniel was my first real mentor, the gruff, kind-hearted man who saw potential in a 25-year-old kid with nothing to his name but worn-out shoes and a fire in his belly. He was also, and this was the complicated part, one of my father's oldest and dearest friends. Alex. His voice was heavy, strained in a way I hadn't heard in years. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't an emergency. I leaned forward, my elbows on the cold marble of my desk. What's wrong, Daniel? Is it your health? No, not me, son. He sighed, a sound crackling with static and worry. It's your father. His firm. It's on its last legs. They're months behind on their lease. I felt a familiar cold dread snake its way up my spine. The feeling was so intense it brought back a sharp, unwelcome memory. Being 15 and excitedly telling my dad about my plan for a summer lawn mowing business, only for him to wave his hand dismissively and say my time was better spent studying for the SATs. That same feeling of being fundamentally misunderstood. Daniel continued, oblivious to the bomb he was dropping. They're about to be evicted, Alex. He's telling everyone this retirement party is a celebration, but it's a Hail Mary pass. He's hoping to woo some new investor to save the company. He's putting everything on this one night. My blood turned to ice. Evicted. I owned the building his firm, Mitchell & Son, was in. For the past 3 years, I was the one who had secretly instructed my property management company to grant them extensions, to keep their rent significantly below market value. All through a blind trust so they'd never know. My father was about to be made homeless, professionally speaking, by me, and he was clueless. He thinks a party will save a sinking ship? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt hollow in the vast emptiness of my office. He's a proud man, you know that, Daniel said. He's pinning all his hopes on it. I know things between you are difficult, but he's your father. You should be there. Not for the past, Alex. For what's left of his future. This will break him. We hung up, and I swiveled my chair to face the window. Proud man. That was an understatement. He was a man carved from pride and expectation. As if summoned by the thought, my phone buzzed again. A new text message. From Robert Mitchell. My father. Don't come to my retirement dinner at Sapphire Grand. It's for successful people only. You can't afford it. Don't embarrass us. The screen glowed in the dimming light, each word a digital ghost of every insult, every dismissal I had endured for a decade. The irony was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The party was at the Sapphire Grand, my flagship hotel, my crown jewel. He was trying to save his company from a building I owned by throwing a lavish party in another building I owned, all while telling me I wasn't worthy to walk through its doors. I looked from the eviction notice I had pulled up on my monitor to the glowing text on my phone. And in that moment, the years of hurt, of quiet, anonymous support, of swallowing my own pride, coalesced into a single point of cold, hard clarity. Daniel was right. I had to go. But my reasons had just changed. This was no longer just about saving him from financial ruin. It was about ending the fiction he had built around me. It was about ending a lie that had lasted for 10 years. I wasn't going to show up as Alex Mitchell, the failure. I was going to arrive as a M. Sterling. And I was going to let the truth have its say. To understand why I was willing to walk into that lion's den, you have to understand the cage they built for me first. You have to know why a M. Sterling had to be born from the ashes of Alex Mitchell. Let's rewind 10 years. I'm 25, holding a business degree I'd worked my tail off for, and I'm sitting in the stiff, formal living room of my parents' house. It was a Sunday. Sunlight streamed through the windows, but it didn't warm the room. My father, Robert, was in his leather armchair, the throne from which he passed judgment. My mother, Margaret, was fussing over a vase of lilies, a master of feigned distraction. And my brother, Thomas, 2 years my senior and a newly minted lawyer, leaned against the doorframe with the easy arrogance of a man who has never known a day of true struggle. He was the golden child, the sun in Mitchell and Son. His path was paved with gold. Mine, it turned out, was about to be washed away. I have something to tell you all. I started, my voice betraying a slight tremor. I've decided to leave the firm. My father rustled his newspaper, a deliberate, dismissive sound. Don't be absurd, Alexander. You've got a clear path to a partnership, a good salary. Your entire future is mapped out. That's the problem, Dad. It's your map, not mine, I said, finding a sliver of courage. I want to work in the hospitality industry. I want to build hotels, manage resorts, create experiences. He finally lowered the newspaper. His eyes, the same shade of blue as mine, were glacial. Hospitality? You want to fluff pillows for a living? We paid for a top-tier business education so you could be a bellboy? His voice dripped with a disappointment so potent it felt like acid. Thomas let out a short, barking laugh. Don't you get it, Dad? He doesn't want a career, he wants a hobby. He wants to talk to people about their vacations. What's next? Becoming a cruise ship director. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, Thomas. I shot back, my face getting hot. It's about logistics, branding, finance. Alexander, think of our standing in the community. My mother chimed in, her voice edged with panic. What will we tell the Prestons? The Blackwoods? Your brother is a respected lawyer. Your father is a pillar of the business community. And you want to work in a service job? We can't have you showing up to the club's Thanksgiving dinner talking about your new uniform. The final verdict came from my father. He stood, his 6-foot frame seeming to suck all the air out of the room. His face was red with a righteous anger. I have built this family's name on a foundation of respectability and financial success. I will not have a son of mine tarnish it by throwing his life away. If you walk out that door to pursue this fantasy, then you are no longer a Mitchell in my eyes. The Mitchell inheritance, the name, it isn't for your kind. Don't you dare come crawling back here when you inevitably fail. The word inheritance was a deliberate twist of the knife. He wasn't just talking about money, he was talking about belonging. I looked from his furious face to my mother's averted gaze, to my brother's triumphant smirk. This was it. This was the moment I became an outcast. So I stood up, my own hands trembling slightly, and walked out that door. The click of the lock behind me was the sound of my old life ending. The first few years were a special kind of hell. I funneled my meager savings into a down payment on a dingy, closet-sized apartment across town. I landed a job as an assistant night manager at a hotel called the Crestview, a place that was one bad review away from being condemned. The pay was a joke, barely enough to cover rent and the instant noodles that became my staple food group. My life became a blur of 16-hour shifts. I did everything. I checked in weary travelers at 3 a.m. I negotiated with angry guests over broken air conditioners. I plunged toilets. I covered shifts for sick housekeepers. I was exhausted, bone-tired, but for the first time in my life, I felt alive. I was learning. I remember one night, a water pipe burst on the third floor. Water was pouring through the ceiling into the hallway. Guests were panicking. My boss was unreachable. I, a 26-year-old kid running on 3 hours of sleep, had to take charge. I got the water shut off, moved all the third-floor guests to new rooms, comped their stays, and spent the rest of the night with a mop and bucket alongside the one janitor on duty. It was miserable, but it was also the first time I felt truly capable. It was in the trenches of the Crestview that I met the two people who would become my real family. Owen Reynolds was a security guard, a quiet, observant guy putting himself through night school to become a forensic accountant. He'd find me passed out at the front desk, a textbook open on my lap. He wouldn't say much. He'd just slide a cup of lukewarm coffee from the machine in front of me and say, "Don't burn out, man." After the flood, he stayed with me all night, helping me clean up. We didn't talk much, just worked. At dawn, we sat on the curb outside, completely spent, and shared a stale donut. That's when I knew he was a true friend. And then there was Daniel Cooper, the hotel's general manager. He was an old-school hotelier, tough, demanding, and rumored to have worked in every major hotel chain on the planet. One night, he found me in the back office, surrounded by piles of invoices and financial reports, trying to figure out why our food costs were so astronomically high. I was just the night manager. This was way above my pay grade. I thought he was going to fire me for overstepping. The next day, he called me into his office. "You found the discrepancy in the produce invoices, didn't you?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yes, sir. It looks like our main supplier has been overcharging us by at least 15% for the last 6 months. He grunted, a sound that could have meant anything. Then he tossed a heavy ledger onto his desk. "I've known about it for a week. Wanted to see if anyone else was paying attention. You were the only one." He pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit. You want to build hotels? You start by learning how to stop one from bleeding to death. Your first project. Renegotiate every single vendor contract we have. Report back to me in a month." Daniel became my mentor. He taught me the brutal, beautiful business of hospitality. He taught me that loyalty from your staff was more valuable than marble in your lobby. He taught me how to see value where others saw ruin. And he gave me the words I would build my life on. Success doesn't mean a thing if you can't stand up for yourself. But true success, kid, is measured by how you treat others when you have the power to walk away. I absorbed every lesson. I saved every dollar. When the Crestview was finally about to go under, I took the business plan I'd been secretly writing for a year and walked into the smallest bank I could find. I was terrified, but Daniel's words echoed in my head. I stood up for myself. I got the loan. I bought the hotel. I renamed it the Sapphire. With Owen and a small, loyal crew from the old staff, we gutted it and rebuilt it. We focused on service, on details, on making every guest feel seen. Within a year, we were turning a profit. That was the start. That was the first brick in the empire. It was then I made the choice to honor my father's decree. He had cast out Alex Mitchell. Fine. I would build my world as someone else. I founded my company as A. M. Sterling. A. For Alexander. M. for my middle name, Michael, and Sterling for my mother's maiden name. A quiet, bitter tribute to the family I had lost. I hired a trusted colleague to be the public-facing CEO, the one who did the interviews and graced the magazine covers. I remained in the shadows, the architect of it all. It gave me the freedom to work, to build, without the baggage of my past. And build I did. Over the next decade, Sapphire Hospitality grew. 35 hotels, luxury resorts, restaurant chains. The money was staggering, but my life was compartmentalized. I kept a distant, painful watch over the Mitchells. I saw Thomas get his promotion. I saw his engagement announcement in the paper. Through my legal team, I created the Blind Trust. It was a buffer, a way for me to provide support without having to endure the sting of their rejection. I bought their office building to save my father's firm from a less forgiving landlord. I covered my parents' mounting medical bills. It was a strange, sterile way to be a son. A few attempts to call home over the years were met with the same cool dismissal. "Oh, Alexander, hello? Yes, we're fine. Thomas just made partner at his law firm, we're so proud. You're still managing that restaurant? That's nice. I have to run, dear." Click. Each call was a fresh wound. So as I stood there, adjusting the cuffs of my custom suit, I knew I wasn't just walking into a party. I was walking into the cross-section of my two lives. Owen, now my impeccably dressed head of global security, stood by my side. "You don't have to do this, Alex," he said quietly. "I know," I said, my hand touching the folder in my coat pocket. The folder with the deed to the Tuscan villa, my peace offering. "But I think it's finally time they met A.M. Sterling." The entrance to the Sapphire Grand was an elegant arch of glass and polished steel, a gateway to a world I had meticulously crafted. Tonight, it felt more like the entrance to a coliseum. My coliseum. I had Owen drop me at the curb from a nondescript town car. I wanted to walk in as Alex Mitchell, the man they thought they knew. The moment my foot hit the pristine sidewalk, the main door opened, but not by a doorman. My brother, Thomas, stepped out, positioning himself squarely in my path. He was wearing a tuxedo that was just a little too tight, a little too flashy. The smug grin he wore, however, was a perfect fit. It was the same one he'd worn 10 years ago as I was being exiled. Some things, I guess, never change. Well, he drawled, his eyes doing a slow, insulting crawl over my simple, dark suit. "Look what the cat dragged in. I'm honestly surprised you have the nerve to show your face. Dad sent you the text, didn't he? Or are you having trouble paying your phone bill these days too?" "I got the text, Thomas," I said, my voice a low, steady calm that I did not feel inside. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Then you know the score." He puffed out his chest, physically asserting his dominance over the space. "This is a private party. For friends and family. Successful ones. The kind who can afford to be here." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was meant to sting. "The champagne they're serving costs more per bottle than your weekly salary. So do us all a favor, turn your little rental car around, and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Don't embarrass Dad on his big night." Every word was a carefully chosen dart, aimed at the insecure 25-year-old he remembered. But he wasn't talking to that person anymore. Through the glass behind him, I could see the glittering chandeliers and the well-dressed guests mingling inside. My guests, in my hotel. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Thomas. I just want to see him," I said, my jaw clenched so tight I could feel a headache starting. "And he doesn't want to see you," a sharp voice cut in. My mother, Margaret, materialized at Thomas's side, a vision in emerald silk and what were probably very expensive, but fake, diamonds. I knew the jeweler who had designed the real version of that necklace. "Alexander, for heaven's sake, have some dignity. Thomas is a partner at his law firm now. We are trying to maintain a certain standard. Your presence here, it just isn't appropriate. We can't bring you to the club for Christmas Eve if people think you're struggling." As if on cue, the third member of their welcome wagon appeared. Vanessa, Thomas's fiancée, a woman whose ambition was as sharp and cold as her cheekbones. She gave my perfectly good leather shoes a look of profound disgust before meeting my eyes. "Still managing that little chain restaurant, Alex?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was talking to a particularly dim-witted child. "You know, I have to give you credit. The sheer audacity is almost impressive. It's like you want people to feel sorry for you. Is that the same suit you wore to Cousin Jenny's wedding 5 years ago?" The three of them formed a perfect, unified wall of condescension. They were so wrapped up in their performance, so certain of their superiority, that they were blind to the absurdity of it all. They were barring me from my own property, mocking my finances while standing in the shadow of my success. As Vanessa mocked my suit, I had a fleeting memory of the final fitting in a quiet, sunlit atelier in Paris, the old tailor smiling and telling me it was a masterpiece. The contrast was dizzying. A part of me, the wounded part, wanted to scream, It wanted to lay it all out right there on the sidewalk. But that wasn't the plan. The plan was colder, more precise. I let a small, unreadable smile touch my lips. I looked past Thomas, my eyes focusing on a point inside the lobby. "I wouldn't be so sure about that, Thomas," I said, my voice still quiet. He frowned, confused by my lack of reaction. "I happen to know the owner of this hotel chain is a very private man, a bit of a recluse. But he has a strict policy. Every guest is treated with respect, regardless of their perceived station in life. You, a lawyer, should know better than to make assumptions." My calm, almost academic response seemed to throw him off more than any angry outburst would have. Before he could formulate a comeback, I saw Owen approaching from inside. He was in his own perfectly tailored suit, an earpiece nestled in his ear, moving with an unhurried purpose that commanded attention. He didn't even glance at my family. He walked right up to me, his expression professional. "A.M.," he said, his voice clear and resonant, easily carrying in the quiet space. "My apologies for the delay. Your table is prepared. Chef Michel is holding the amuse-bouche for your final tasting approval. And I've taken the liberty of rescheduling your 9 a.m. conference call with the Tokyo delegation to 11. I thought you might appreciate a later start tomorrow." The silence that fell was immediate and absolute. It was as if a vacuum had sucked all the sound from the street. Thomas's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "A.M.," he finally choked out, the two letters sounding like a foreign language. My mother's hand flew to her chest, her knuckles white against the green silk. Vanessa's face, which had been a canvas of smug disdain, was now wiped completely blank with shock. A doorman, who had been watching the exchange, saw Owen's deferential posture and hurried over, pulling the heavy glass door open. He nodded to me with practiced respect. "Good evening, sir. Welcome." Owen gestured for me to precede him. As I stepped over the threshold, into the warm, glittering light of the lobby, the front desk manager, a bright young woman named Rachel Chun, whom I'd personally interviewed, looked up. Her face broke into a radiant, welcoming smile. "Mr. Sterling," she exclaimed, her voice carrying across the marble floor. "Welcome back. We trust your flight was comfortable. The presidential suite is ready for your father's celebration. Shall I let them know you've arrived?" Mr. Sterling. The name landed like a grenade in the middle of my family. I saw the recognition flash in Vanessa's eyes first. She was a lawyer. She read the financial pages. She knew that name. I saw the dawning confusion on my mother's face. I didn't turn back. I simply gave Rachel a warm smile. "Thank you, Rachel. That would be wonderful." And with that, I walked into the heart of my empire, leaving the ruins of my family's arrogance shattered on the sidewalk behind me. The walk from the entrance to the private elevator was like moving through a dream. The lobby of the Sapphire Grand was alive with the quiet bustle of a five-star hotel on a busy night. To me, it was a symphony I had conducted. I knew the acoustics of the room, the source of the faint scent of white tea and citrus in the air, the name of the artist who had painted the abstract canvas behind the concierge desk. Every staff member I passed offered a subtle, professional acknowledgement. A crisp nod from the head concierge, a warm smile from a waitress arranging a table at the lobby bar, a slight bow from one of the security personnel stationed discreetly near the entrance. They weren't fawning. It was something better, a quiet, shared respect. They knew me as Mr. Sterling, the demanding but fair owner who remembered their names and valued their work. Behind me, I could hear the hesitant, shuffling footsteps of my family. They were following me into a world they didn't understand, a world where the roles had been violently, inexplicably reversed. I could feel their confusion radiating like heat. "Your father is in the presidential suite," Owen murmured beside me, his voice low. "He booked it on his platinum card." I ran the number. "It's a few $100s away from being declined." I shook my head. The performance of wealth was always more important to him than the reality of it. As we reached the gilded doors of the private elevator, I could hear my mother's frantic whispers. "Sterling, Robert, isn't that the name of the man who bought the old Harrison building?" The one Thomas said was some foreign ghost investor. Thomas's reply was a strangled, incoherent sound. Vanessa, however, was deadly silent. The gears in her sharp, legal mind were turning at a furious pace. She was no longer thinking about my cheap suit. She was thinking about her firm's multimillion-dollar lease application for the Sapphire Tower, an application that was currently sitting on my desk, awaiting my personal signature. She was thinking about her future partnership, a promotion that was contingent on landing that very lease. She was realizing she had just insulted the man who held her entire career in the palm of his hand. The elevator arrived with a soft ping. We stepped in. The doors closed, encasing the four of us in a small, suffocating box of polished mahogany and stunned silence. I caught my reflection in the mirrored surface. Thomas was fidgeting with his cufflinks, a nervous tic I hadn't seen since he was a kid. My mother was smoothing a non-existent wrinkle on her dress, her gaze fixed on the floor. Vanessa's eyes darted everywhere, calculating, assessing, no doubt looking for an escape route. I just looked calm. I didn't feel it. Inside, a storm of 10 years of resentment was raging. When the doors opened again, we were in a private vestibule. Soft music and the murmur of conversation drifted from the open doors of the presidential suite just ahead. A server in a crisp uniform stood waiting for us. She smiled warmly at me. "Mr. Sterling, welcome. A glass of the 98 Dom Perignon you requested for the celebration." "Thank you, Maria," I said, taking a flute. My family stared. They looked at Maria, then at me as if trying to solve an impossible equation. I had used the server's name. We stepped into the suite. It was a sprawling space, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. 50 or 60 people, the pillars of my father's social and professional world, were clustered in conversation, holding glasses of my champagne, eating canapés prepared by my chef. My father was in his element. He stood in the center of the room, holding a glass of scotch, regaling a small group with a story. He was laughing, his face flushed with bonhomie. He was playing the role of the beloved patriarch, the respected man of business entering a golden retirement. Then his eyes found me at the entrance. His smile vanished, replaced by a flash of pure fury. He excused himself and began striding towards me, weaving through his guests with a grim determination. "Alexander," he hissed as he reached me, his voice a low, vicious growl meant only for my ears. "I have never been more embarrassed in my life. I gave you a direct order. You will leave this instant. Get out before I have security remove you." Before I could form a reply, a man standing next to my father turned. It was Walter Harrison, an executive VP at one of the country's largest banks. Walter was a man my father had been courting for years, for both business and social validation. Walter's professional smile froze on his face. His eyes widened, not at my father, but at me. A look of complete and utter shock washed over him. He completely ignored my father's presence and shot his hand out towards me. "Mr. Sterling," he exclaimed, his voice booming slightly in his surprise. "My God, I had no idea you were back in the States. My office has been trying to get on your schedule for months. That loan proposal for our new tech division. It needs your final approval." My father went rigid. His hand, which had been moving to grab my arm, stopped mid-air. He looked at Walter's outstretched hand, then at my face. He heard the name, Mr. Sterling. He heard the words, loan proposal, final approval. The concepts were so alien in relation to me that his brain seemed to short-circuit. "Walter, what did you just call him?" he stammered. Walter, completely missing the family drama unfolding, let out a chuckle. "This is A.M. Sterling Robert, the founder of Sapphire Hospitality. He's only one of the most important private investors in the country. Don't tell me you two know each other?" As if to hammer the nail into the coffin, James Preston, the senior managing partner of Preston and Whitmore, stepped into the circle. He was a man who could smell opportunity from a mile away. "Sterling." His eyes lit up with the avaricious gleam of a predator. He too bypassed my father. James Preston. My firm has our flagship lease proposal for the Sapphire Tower on your desk. A crucial deal for our firm's future. He then shot a pointed look at Thomas, who was standing paralyzed behind my mother. Your brother, my junior partner, assured me he had a personal connection to the owner. I'm beginning to see that connection is far more direct than he led us to believe. The final, devastating blow came from a notorious socialite named Elizabeth Blackwood, a woman my mother desperately admired. She let out a theatrical gasp. Mitchell? Is your last name actually Mitchell? Oh, Robert, she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room. Is this your other son? The one you told me was having such a hard time finding his way? The one who was a waiter. The party died. The music seemed to fade. Every single person in that room turned to stare. They stared at my father, whose face was now the color of ash. They stared at my mother, who was clutching Thomas's arm as if it were a lifeboat. They stared at my brother, who looked as if he was about to vomit. And they stared at me. My father took an involuntary step backward, stumbling slightly. The look in his eyes was no longer anger. It was a profound, world-shattering horror. He wasn't just realizing that his younger son was successful. He was realizing, in front of all his peers, that his entire life's philosophy, his worship of success and his contempt for perceived failure, had just been publicly, spectacularly, and irrevocably proven to be a lie. And the keeper of that truth was the very son he had deemed worthless. The silence in the room was a living thing. It was thick and heavy, punctuated only by the clink of ice in a forgotten glass. The partygoers weren't just watching a family argument. They were witnessing a public execution of a man's entire identity. My father's identity. He looked at me, his mouth agape, his carefully constructed world lying in smoking ruins around his feet. The man who had always had an answer, a judgment, a pronouncement, was utterly speechless. My mother was the first to react. Her social survival instincts, honed over decades of country club politics, took over. She detached herself from Thomas and rushed to my side, her face a theatrical mask of maternal joy. Oh, Alexander, my brilliant boy! Her voice, sharp and unnaturally loud, sliced through the silence. She grabbed my arm, her grip like a vice. I always knew it. I told your father, didn't I, Robert? I said, that boy of ours is a genius. He's just playing the long game. We are so proud. The performance was so transparently false it was painful to watch. The shift from cold disdain on the sidewalk to gushing pride in the suite was whiplash-inducing. I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but blind panic. I gently but firmly unhooked her fingers from my arm. Mom, not now, I said, my voice low and final. Her face fell. Her best weapon, manipulative emotion, had just been rendered useless. I scanned the room. Vanessa was gone. No dramatic exit, no tearful farewell to her fiancé. She had simply assessed the new balance of power, realized her position was untenable, and vanished. A clean cut. I had to give her credit for her ruthless efficiency. My gaze then fell on Thomas. He was a wreck. He had retreated to a corner, his face ashen, his hands shaking so violently he couldn't hold his phone steady. He wasn't the smug prince anymore. He was just a terrified man who had bet on the wrong horse and just realized the horse, the jockey, and the entire racetrack were owned by the person he tried to trip at the starting gate. It was time to end his suspense. I crossed the room to him. He flinched as I approached, refusing to look up. Tell me something, Thomas. I began, my voice dangerously calm. As a lawyer, you believe in ethics, right? In professional conduct. He looked up, confused by the question. What? Of course. Good. So what would you call it, professionally speaking, when one lawyer calls a financial institution to spread false rumors about a family member in order to prevent them from securing a business loan? What's the legal term for that? The color drained from his face as he realized where this was going. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do. I pulled the slim leather folder from my jacket. Felt heavy in my hand. You see, after I was turned away by every bank in this city 10 years ago, I got curious. Took me years and a lot of money, but I eventually found out why. Powerful people leave paper trails, Thomas, even when they think they're being clever. I opened the folder and took out a single sheet of paper. It was a sworn affidavit from a loan officer, an old college buddy of Thomas's. He had come forward years later, ridden with guilt. I read from it, my voice cold and clear. Thomas Mitchell told me his younger brother, Alexander, was emotionally unstable and a flight risk. He said he had a history of making poor financial decisions and that any loan given to him would be a complete loss. He framed it as looking out for the bank, but it felt like he was actively trying to sabotage his brother. I looked up from the page and met his terrified gaze. He goes on, Thomas, in detail. He describes how you called him 3 separate times to make sure the loan was denied. A choked sob escaped my brother's lips. You didn't just watch Dad throw me out, I said, the words like chips of ice. You went behind my back and tried to bolt the door shut. You tried to guarantee I would fail. You wanted to be the only son left standing. I then pulled out the second document. And this is a formal notice to your firm's senior partner, James Preston. It details the material misrepresentations and ethical breaches you made in your Sapphire Tower lease application. Consider your promotion and likely your entire career at that firm terminated. You're done. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. All the air went out of him. He slumped in his chair, a hollowed-out shell of a man, and finally buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent, pathetic sobs. I felt nothing. No pity, no triumph. Just a vast, cold emptiness. I turned and walked out onto the terrace, the cool night air a welcome relief. The city glittered below, an ocean of light, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in the towers above it. The glass door slid open behind me. It was my father. He looked like a stranger. The swagger, the arrogance, all of it stripped away, leaving a frail old man. He came to stand beside me at the railing. My father, your grandfather, he came to this country with nothing. He began, his voice hoarse and distant. He built a small business from scratch. He always told me, Robert, a man is nothing without a legacy. A name that means something. I was so afraid of failing him. I thought success, a good name, a respectable profession. I thought that was the only thing that mattered, the only inheritance worth giving. He finally turned to me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading confusion. Why didn't you tell us, Alexander? Why would you hide all of this? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Tell you? Dad, when was the last time you actually listened to me? The last time I tried to tell you about my passion, you told me I wasn't a Mitchell anymore. You didn't want a son with dreams. You wanted a son who was a carbon copy of you. You wanted Thomas. I was wrong, he choked out, the words painful for him to form. I was a fool. I am so proud of you, son. Please, can you forgive me? There it was. The question he thought would fix everything. The appeal for forgiveness, offered only now that I had proven my worth in the only currency he valued, money and power. He wasn't proud of me. He was proud of my portfolio. In that moment, a dark, ugly part of me surfaced. The wounded 25-year-old inside wanted to hurt him. It wanted to sneer and say, "Forgive you? I'm about to foreclose on your company. How's that for forgiveness?" It wanted to see him completely and utterly broken. But then I remembered Daniel's words. Standing up for yourself. This was the test. Was I going to become a mirror image of my father, using power to wound? Or was I going to be someone else? Someone better. I chose better. This was never about forgiveness, Dad, I said, my voice finally steady. This is about respect. You were never proud of me. You're proud of this. I swept my hand out, indicating the sprawling city. You're proud of what A.M. Sterling built. You never respected Alex Mitchell. You didn't respect the 16-hour days, the ramen noodle dinners, the risk, the struggle, the passion. You only respect the polished end result. And I can't forgive you for that, because your respect was never mine to earn. It was supposed to be unconditional. I reached into my pocket and retrieved the folder containing the deed to the villa in Tuscany. I placed it on the small table between us. This weight felt immense. "This was your retirement gift," I said softly. "A peace offering, I guess. Now, it's just a piece of paper. I left it there. But it's proof that the son you threw away never fully threw you away. Think about that." I turned my back on him and walked back into the silent, broken party, leaving him alone with the city, the deed, and the devastating truth. Stepping back into the suite was like walking into the aftermath of a battle. The air was thick with tension. The remaining guests, the ones too fascinated by the drama or too sycophantic to leave, were clustered in small, whispering groups. The music had been turned off. The silence was louder. My mother intercepted me before I had taken 3 steps. Her face was a ruin of tear-streaked foundation. "Alexander, we can fix this," she pleaded, her voice a desperate, cracking whisper. "We're a family. We can start over. A family should be together." She reached for me, her hands outstretched as if to physically pull our broken family back together. I held up a hand, not unkindly, but with an unmistakable firmness. It was a barrier, the first real boundary I had ever erected between us. "We will talk, Mom," I said, my voice level. "But not tonight. Tonight is over." The finality in my tone stopped her cold. She stared at me, her mind unable to process a scenario where her emotional appeals had no effect. She was a general without an army. As I moved towards the exit, one of my father's old business partners, a man named Henderson, tried to intercept me, a slimy, sycophantic smile on his face. "Mr. Sterling. Alex, my boy. I always saw the fire in you. We should play a round of golf sometime, discuss some synergies." I didn't even break my stride. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, "I don't play golf, Henderson." I left him standing there with his fake smile frozen on his face. The final confrontation of the night, however, was still to come. Just as I thought I was free, Vanessa reappeared. She had not, it turned out, made her final exit. She had merely retreated to regroup. She emerged from the powder room, her lipstick reapplied, her composure restored. She was a warrior. I had to give her that. She strode past Thomas, who was still slumped in his chair, a non-entity. She walked directly to me, her eyes bright with a new, terrifyingly focused strategy. "Alex," she began, her voice a low, intimate purr. "I owe you an apology. I was misinformed. It's clear to me now that you are the true visionary in this family. What you've accomplished is breathtaking." She took a step closer. "I've always been drawn to power, to vision. Thomas, I see now, has neither. He was a strategic error. You and I, on the other hand, I think we could be a formidable team. Professionally, of course. Perhaps we could discuss it over dinner." The audacity was staggering. She was attempting to jettison her fiancé and pivot to me in the same breath, right in the middle of the wreckage of my family's lives. She saw this not as a tragedy, but as a hostile takeover opportunity. I let a cold, thin smile touch my lips. "Vanessa, you're a lawyer. Let me speak in terms you'll understand." I paused, letting her lean in with anticipation. "Your association with my brother wasn't a misjudgment. It was a calculated merger that you hoped would lead to a profitable acquisition of status. But your partner firm has just been revealed to be insolvent. The merger is off, and there will be no new negotiations." I leaned in a fraction closer. "Now, I believe you know where the exit is. Don't let it hit you on the way out." Her face, for the first time, flooded with color. A deep, mottled red of pure fury and public humiliation. Her mask didn't just crack. It disintegrated. She shot me a look of pure hatred, turned on her heel, and marched out of the suite without a single backward glance. This time it was for good. Finally, there was only my father. He had come in from the terrace, clutching the leather folder to his chest like a holy text. He looked utterly defeated. The fight was gone. All that was left was a quiet, hollowed-out man. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a plea. It was the simple, terrified question of a man who had just lost the map to his own life. Now, I said, my voice softening slightly, you actually get to retire. Tomorrow morning, a team from my company, led by Owen, will begin a discreet audit of Mitchell and Son. They will be professional and respectful. I spelled it out, leaving no room for misunderstanding. I will personally absorb the company's debts. This is not for you. It is for the 20 employees who worked for you for years and deserve to keep their pensions. They will all receive generous severance packages. Your clients will be transitioned to other reputable firms. I will ensure that the Mitchell name is not dragged through a messy public bankruptcy. Your professional legacy, what's left of it, will be clean. He nodded slowly, processing the terms of his rescue. It was a bailout, not a partnership. And Thomas? He whispered, his eyes darting over to his catatonic son. I looked at my brother, the golden child, now tarnished beyond recognition. The temptation for vengeance was a faint, bitter taste in the back of my throat. But what would be the point? He was already a ghost. Thomas is a grown man, I said, the words feeling heavy and final. I won't release the evidence of his sabotage to the state bar. I won't actively ruin him, but I won't help him either. His trust fund, the one you set up for him, is now worthless as the firm's assets are gone. The inheritance he was so worried about me sharing has vanished. He will have to find his own way, for the first time in his life. The consequences are his to bear alone. My father closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path down his wrinkled cheek. It was the price of his favoritism come due at last. Owen appeared at my elbow. The car is waiting, Alex. I nodded and turned to leave. As I reached the door, my mother spoke one last time, her voice small and lost. Why, Alexander? After all of it, why are you helping us at all? I paused at the threshold, looking back at the two people who had created me and then rejected me. Because, I said softly, that's what a son is supposed to do. And then I walked out, leaving them in the silent, gilded cage they had built for themselves. The next 6 months were a marathon of legal and financial maneuvers. Dissolving a company, even a small one, is a messy business. But it was also a period of strange, quiet reconstruction, not just of balance sheets but of lives. I held to my promise. Mitchell and Son was laid to rest with dignity. Its employees were cared for, its clients were protected. My father's name was spared the public humiliation of bankruptcy. He and my mother sold the big, empty house in the suburbs and moved into a comfortable but far more modest condo downtown. The blind trust was dissolved, and I set up a new, transparent one to handle their ongoing medical needs. There were no more secrets. I got updates on my father through Daniel. After weeks of drifting aimlessly, he had started volunteering at a nonprofit that offered financial counseling to low-income families. He was using his decades of accounting experience to help people who were truly struggling, not to pad a bottom line. One afternoon, I stopped by the community center unannounced. I saw him through the glass of a small office, patiently explaining a budget to a young couple who looked terrified and overwhelmed. He was gentle. He was kind. He didn't see me, and I left without saying a word. It was a quiet act of penance, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something that resembled respect for him. Thomas, as I had predicted, fell hard. Without the safety net of my father's reputation or money, his career at Preston and Whitmore ended. He was asked to resign quietly to avoid a formal ethics investigation. I got a call from my lawyer a few months later. Vanessa had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Her strategic merger had failed, so she was liquidating her assets. The last I heard, Thomas was working as a paralegal, drowning in paperwork at a small personal injury firm an hour outside the city. He had gone from a prince to a serf. We hadn't spoken. The silence between us was a chasm too wide to cross. My own relationship with my parents began to transform into something new and strange. It was not the warm, loving family from television sitcoms. It was intentional. We had a scheduled phone call every Sunday afternoon. We had dinner once a month at a quiet restaurant of my choosing. These encounters were often awkward, navigating a minefield of things unsaid. But they were consistent. They were an effort. One Tuesday evening, about 8 months after the party, I went to their condo for dinner. My mother had insisted on cooking. This was, in itself, a monumental event. For as long as I could remember, she had outsourced cooking to caterers, viewing her own kitchen with a kind of aristocratic disdain. The meal was simple: roast chicken, potatoes, a green salad. It was delicious. "This is really good, Mom," I said, breaking the silence. She looked up, surprised, and a small, genuine smile touched her lips. "Thank you, Alexander." After we finished, she disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a small, leather-bound book. It was old, the cover softened with age, the pages stained and dog-eared. "I found this when we were packing up the old house," she said, placing it on the table in front of me. It was her recipe book, the one she had used constantly when I was a child, before the pursuit of status had replaced the joy of simple things. My throat felt tight. "Chef Michel," I started. "The lemon meringue pie she made." My mother finished for me, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "The recipe is in here. It was always your favorite. I don't think I'd made it a single time since the day you left." It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. A small, cracked-open window into a part of her I thought had died long ago. It was an admission of loss, a quiet acknowledgement that my absence had been a hole in her life, one she had spent years wallpapering over with social engagements and designer clothes. We sat with that fragile truth for a moment. Then, I saw a familiar look flicker in her eyes. It was the old skepticism, the deeply ingrained belief that everything, even kindness, must have a price. "Alexander," she said, her voice shifting back towards the formal tone she used when she was uneasy. "I still don't quite understand. All those years, the rent for the firm, the hospital bills. We were horrible to you. Why did you do it? What was it you wanted from us?" The question didn't sting like it would have a year ago. I didn't feel the need to defend myself. I just saw her for what she was. A woman so accustomed to a world of transactions that an act of unconditional love was, to her, a logical fallacy. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. Her skin felt thin, papery. "I didn't want anything," I said, my voice gentle. "I did it because you are my mother and he is my father. I did it because that is what a son does." I gave her hand a light squeeze. "Even when his parents have forgotten what it means to be parents." 2 tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks. They weren't the dramatic, performative tears of the party. They were silent, genuine tears of regret, of understanding. In that moment, I think she finally saw me. Not M. Sterling, the billionaire. Not Alexander, the disappointment. Just Alex, her son. It wasn't a perfect, storybook reconciliation. Our family was still a fractured thing. But for the first time, the pieces felt like they might one day fit together again, forming something new. Something scarred, maybe, but something honest. And for now, that was more than enough. Today, I'm standing in my office again. It's been over a year since that fateful retirement party. The skyline outside my window is the same, a breathtaking panorama of steel and glass, but my view of it has changed. I no longer see it as a collection of assets on a balance sheet. I see it as a city full of homes, of people, of countless stories unfolding simultaneously. On the corner of my vast marble desk, nestled between a state-of-the-art monitor and a stack of financial reports, sits a small, stained recipe book. It's the most valuable thing I own. My phone chimes with a new message. I pick it up. It's a photo from my mother. It shows her and my father, standing on the terrace of the villa in Tuscany. They're not posing for the camera. My father has his arm around her, and they're both looking out at the rolling hills, a shared, peaceful smile on their faces. The caption below it is simple. 3 words. "Thank you, son. I still have the company. I still have the wealth." But the meaning of those words has been fundamentally rewritten for me. Wealth isn't the number in my bank account. It's the strength to set a boundary and the grace to build a bridge. Power isn't controlling a boardroom. It's controlling my own reactions, choosing compassion over vengeance. The door to my office opens and Daniel Cooper walks in. He's grayer now, but his eyes are as sharp as ever. He officially sits on my company's board, but his real title will always be mentor. He joins me at the window. "It never gets old, does it?" he says, nodding at the view. "No, it doesn't." I agree. He claps a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder. "You remember that lesson I beat into your thick skull all those years ago? About standing up for yourself?" I smile. "It's hard to forget." "Good." He smiles back, a genuine, proud smile that still feels like a gift. "Because you figured out the masterclass lesson all on your own. Any fool can build a fortress for himself. A wise man builds a foundation for others." My eyes drift to a different folder on my desk, one filled not with contracts, but with essays and transcripts. It's the application file for the first round of students receiving the Mitchell and Cooper Hospitality Fund, a full scholarship I created for kids from underprivileged backgrounds who want to enter the industry. Kids like I was. Kids with a fire in their belly and a world telling them they're not good enough. I pick up the top application. It's from a young woman from a small town in Ohio. She wants to be a hotel designer. Her essay is about how she believes hotels can be more than just buildings. They can be places of refuge, of celebration, of memory. She writes about sketching designs for hotels in her notebook since she was 12 years old. Feels like I'm reading a page from my own diary. I write "approved" in big letters across the top of her file. I look at the old family photo on my desk. For years, all I saw was disappointment and judgment. Now I see it differently. I see the fear in my father's eyes, the anxiety in my mother's, the deep-seated insecurity in my brother's. I see flawed, broken people who did the best they could with the tools they had. It doesn't excuse the pain they caused, but it allows me to understand it. And in that understanding, I find a quiet peace. I finally get it. The whole 10-year journey, the pain, the struggle, the lonely success. It wasn't about proving my family wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was worthy. Worthy of respect. Worthy of my own dreams. Worthy of a life built on my own terms. I built my own table brick by painful brick. And now I have the profound, quiet joy of deciding who gets to sit there with me. And that is a richness beyond any measure. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight to be seen for who you truly are? I'd be honored to read your experiences. Please share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.